All right, well, hi everyone, and thank you all for joining us this evening. My name's Amy, and I'm the museum coordinator at the North Lanark Regional Museum. We are very happy to have the opportunity to bring to you a digital speaker series in 2021. And while this event has no ticket cost, we do encourage you to make a donation to the North Lanark Historical Society. The Historical Society is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to the collection, preservation, and presentation of local history, and your donations help to ensure that we can continue to offer these fantastic events. The link to our donation page will be put into the chat box. Now, without further ado, I'm happy today to introduce our speakers, Ward Hewitt and Adam Dowdall. Originally from Northern Ontario, Ward is a retired military veteran who has been metal detecting for 8 years. When he retired and moved to Lanark County, he discovered on early maps that there were 2 sites from the early 1800s on his property and began metal detecting. Ward considers metal detecting to be a great escape and does a lot of research to find the oldest sites possible. Adam has been metal detecting for 21 years and started at just 17 years old when his father gave him his first machine for Christmas. He has had displays of some of his finds at Beckwith Heritage Days for several years and was involved in the 200th anniversary of Beckwith Township. Adam has his own Facebook group that supports others looking to get into the hobby. We are very happy that Ward and Adam have taken the time to prepare this presentation for us as they present Uncovering the Past, an Introduction to Metal Detecting.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ward and this is Adam. This is an exciting lecture to give. It's a common interest that we both share. Metal detecting can be very rewarding in a lot of different ways. You can get a little bit of exercise. You can share it with people of all ages. I know a lot of people that have grandkids that buy them a little detector and they go out and they have a lot of fun. So it's going to just be a basic introduction. We're not going to get into the advanced strategies and techniques and stuff, but after this, you'll be pretty good to go to get a detector and get going and have some fun with it. And, that's what it's all about, is have fun with it and recover some neat pieces of history. So it's also one of the fastest growing hobbies in North America for a great number of years. It's probably people in my age group and older got a little more free time if they're retired and they know a lot about the property and they want to try to find something. So it's kind of neat. The detectors have come a long ways in the last 40 years. They've been out for about 40 years, Adam?
Since probably the early to mid 60s.
Yeah,
50
so
years probably.
So they've been out a long time and a lot of sites have been hit hard, but the old machines were more of a beep and dig. You got a sound, you dug a hole. You didn't really have a clue if it was silver, copper, brass, or a old pop can. Anyway, so they've come a long ways. Now they have wireless ones, and we'll go through some of the different things that are available out there. So we brought one detector and some coils and different things, and we'll do a bit of a demonstration. And we really wish people would ask questions as they come up. So I'm going to be watching the screen. Please just put your hand kind of like that so I can see you have a question, and then I'll be quiet, or Adam, and we'll get you to ask your question. And I really hope there's some interest in lots of questions. And that's the best way to learn. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Okay, so like I said, there's lots of different makes and models. The thing is about detecting, it's like anything in life though. The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. If you think you're going to buy a detector and go find $400,000 or $500,000 worth of coins, you're terribly mistaken. Right, Adam?
That's right. It's a lot of patience.
Yeah, a lot of patience and practice, but it can also be a lot of fun. It's a truly nice escape. I get the headphones on and I forget about everything except for what I'm doing. And, some people do that when they're knitting or golfing, for example. But metal detecting is a lot of fun. So this one here is an AT Pro. It's a kind of a midline, high midline, Adam.
This retails around $650 right now.
Yeah, which is a little overpriced, but it's a very good machine. It's a very good machine.
Does everything it needs to do.
Yeah, it's submersible, which is kind of nice if you're in an area where you're hitting the shoreline, like an old log cabin, and you want to just check in the water. Everybody traveled by water in the old days, everybody. And that's my specialty, is the old sites. I try to hit 16 and 1700 sites and mostly 1800 sites. You're kind of limited in this area, 16 and 1700 sites. But if you're near the St. Lawrence or the Ottawa River or any major fur trade travel route, it's amazing what you might be able to find. And the nice thing about those sites is there's no modern garbage or very little garbage. So if you get a signal, it's usually something very old. And we'll go through some of the old stuff that we've found over the years later in the lecture. So this one here, if you look at the coil, this is a 5x8 coil, and it's called a double D. So essentially, when he's swinging this, it's just like a half moon, just like a knife blade half moon. The concentric coils are round, and they kind of go down like a cone, an inverted cone or a funnel. This is another one. This is for my high-end detector. I don't think they can see it. Oh yeah, they can see it. Yeah, so this is off of a dais. It's a 9-inch, and it's also a double D. And they all have coil covers. If you do buy a detector, make sure you get it with the coil cover. It protects all the components inside, and you don't wear it out. Coil, it's very heavy to swing. You typically only use this on an old site with very little to no modern trash. It's just because it'd be impossible to locate your target. So it has its purpose. I've only used it 3 times. I didn't find anything really good with it, but in the right spot, this could be the good one. You want to say anything about coils, Adam?
Not at this moment.
Okay, very good. So the thing is, the machines come with different frequencies. The higher the frequency, the more sensitive it is to small targets, deep targets, and gold. I know I probably got some people's attention. Gold. There's some people that's all they detect is gold. That's all they go after. So you can, and we'll get into it in a minute on how you could do that. Some people like myself like to do the old site. So I dig iron because you can find a fur trade axe as an example. We've both found them. Yours is 1630, 1650.
Yeah.
And I've got one like that too. And I've got another 1700 one. And I also have one that was made in Montreal in the late 1700s, early 1800s, right near the end of the bulk of the fur trade. So, you know, depending on your style of hunting and what you're trying to find, dictates your settings and type of machine and type of coil. Does anybody have any questions on the types of coils? Okay, fair enough. We'll move right through it then.
This guy's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Charles.
So you have different types of coils for different targets, different types of targets?
No, most coils are good for most targets, but if you're going to specialize, like if you're going to be strictly in the water looking for gold, for instance, or in a rural spot in Northern Ontario and Crown Land, you'd probably end up using a double D coil, and you'd use zero discrimination. But yes, there is different coils for different types of hunting. Can you add to that at all?
This coil here is really good in trashy areas. Like if you're going through like an old home site and there's a big nail bed, you'll probably use something like this size to pick through the nails and get the coins and buttons and earrings and rings and basically that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'll give you another example, Charles. So this is a nail and a bottle cap. Every property's got them, every property. So bring up the coil. So you can imagine having a nail and a bottle cap and a coin. With a big coil like the one I showed you earlier, you would probably not find the coin. You get masking from undesirable targets like iron. You get what they call masking. So if the nail is like that, I'll get a little closer. If the nail is like that above the coin, most detectors would not hit on the coin. This machine here will, but this is a very expensive machine. Most people would not buy that machine unless you're right into it and you love it. And then I would highly recommend getting it. That's about it. So does that answer your question, Charles?
Yeah, with just one extra thing. If you buy a detector, can you get them with, can you get another head for your machine and put another head on? Okay, absolutely. So you don't have to buy a new detector just for a new head.
No, you can buy that detector that he has right there right now will do just about anything anybody needs to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. So I'm just going to bring up a picture. So we're going to bring up pictures occasionally through it and just talk about them, some of the finds. So this here is what some people call a smokehouse lock or a Mickey Mouse lock. And that was found on private property. It was a little bit ornate, and obviously it's very rusted. But we tend to find quite a few of these. And really, they were easy to pick. But again, if the lock was on the building, it kept the honest person honest for the most part. Same as today's standards. You have anything to add on that? No. Okay, we're good. So this here is a double dray. So a dray was a wagon with a horse, so this, or an ox. That was found on Trenton, and I found that in Trenton a number of years ago. And there's single drays. It's not a really good picture of it, but you get the idea. So that would have been right probably on the horse's bridle, or maybe the owner. That was, you needed a commercial license to have that tag, by the way, which I found out through research after locating the item. And it probably will go to the Trenton Museum in the near future. We're going to throw the odd picture in every once in a while just to show you some of the things that you can find. So we're going to talk about the function buttons. Every machine has different buttons on it. So the first button we're going to talk about is discrimination. So discrimination is exactly what it is. Most targets don't, well, I shouldn't say most targets. Most machines have like what they call an ID numbers on it on the face. Could you just turn it on quickly? And we'll just give them a demo. So this machine here, you have to go around the other way. Show them the ID numbers. So on the screen, if we can get it close enough, I don't know if that's close enough, but we'll try. No, you can't see the number very good. But anyways, the numbers are correlated to the item that you're just went over. So that was a 75, and this is a early 1900s large cent. So the more you do detecting, the better you learn. And on the computer, there's all kinds of instructional videos, and there's even tables. Everybody's familiar with tables, and it shows you that, you know, with this machine, that coin should register, you know, between this and this. So it's kind of a guideline. It's not in rock. If the target is too deep, you won't see the ID numbers. You still might get the signal, but you won't get the ID numbers. I personally don't go by numbers. I just go by sound. But that's just the way I've evolved. I used to go by the numbers when I started, but just, it's an indicator. So discrimination is a very good thing because it can eliminate a lot of the garbage, little pieces of nails, old thumbtacks, anything kind of like that. Did you add something to the discrimination, Adam? Like,
I'm okay for now.
Okay, so it's got a purpose. I typically don't use a lot of discrimination, and the reason being is you lose a little bit of depth, and you don't hear everything. If I'm on a brand new fresh site, I use 0 disc. I want to find where that building was. And what I mean by that is the old log building, the first building that went on that piece of real estate back in the late 1700s, early 1800s. Even though there might be a big, beautiful old stone mansion there, pretty much guarantee there was a log building there previous to that, or a shed, or a barn, or a slaughterhouse, or a smokehouse. Different things. So I use 0 discrimination. Once I get into the nail beds, I'm right on top of the site. That's when I'll apply a little bit of discrimination, and it'll eliminate a lot of the garbage. Just the nails, bottle caps, stuff like that. You don't typically find too many bottle caps on the 1800 sites, but you do find what do they call it? Ox shoes, horse shoes, axe heads, stuff like that. Stuff like that. So if you use too much discrimination, it's harder to find a site.
Right.
Yeah. So that is any questions on discrimination? Yes, go ahead, Shane.
Hi there. I've just the way you were describing that, I got the impression that maybe people new to the hobby, every time they get a good sound, they dig. But after you've been doing it a while, you kind of go, no, that's not worth my time. Would that be an accurate kind of way you develop?
Absolutely. That was a great question because I'll be honest with you. When I found those two places on my own property, the very first year I started detecting, I literally dug 6 5-gallon pails of junk. I actually found an old horse carriage axle. I never found anything good, nothing. Because every time the machine made a sound, like you say, I dug. But that's not the idea here. We're trying to get you to get the better stuff and forget the garbage.
Yeah, but it's kind of the learning curve then, is figuring out what you're finding and what you're able to discriminate as you move along. Okay.
Absolutely. So once you get going for a little while, I'll finish this and I'll get the next person. So once you get familiar with machine, you can do air tests. You just turn on your machine and just put a nail under the coil, listen, look at the numbers, put a silver coin, like try to get your head around what the machine is trying to tell you. I always say to guys, I let the machine tell me when I need to dig. Is that you satisfied with that response? Shane?
Yep, that's good. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Next person, please. Go ahead, Janet.
It's Brian hiding behind Janet. But I'd be interested to ask Adam, I know both of you do it, but how do you tell the people how you find the old homesteads? Adam, what's your secret?
When I'm walking through the bush, if you see something that doesn't look right, like if you see like a honeysuckle bush or a lilac bush or a bunch of roses or an indent in the ground, a lot of the old houses didn't have foundations. So sometimes you just got to look for a slight indent in the ground. Like it might only be like 6 inches to a foot deep, probably could be anywhere from 6 feet wide to 8 or 10 feet long. You look for stone piles, old wells, anything that's out of the ordinary in the middle of the bush. If you're in the farmer's field, it might have been worked over the years, so there might not be a foundation anymore. So just take your machine, scan around, and look for the nails. And once I find square head nails, I know I'm in the right spot.
Good, thank you.
Can I just add a little bit to that? I do a lot of plowed fields, So I go on the computer and what's the name of those maps?
Google Maps or
no.
McGill University?
Yeah, I think they're called McGill University maps. But anyways, they're maps of all the townships broken down into lots and concession. So for instance, we'll say a 100-acre chunk. There's a new bungalow on it, for instance. Well, when I look at the computer and cross-reference it with Google Maps, I can clearly see that the original old building was, we'll say, the top left corner of the frontage, but the new bungalow's at the front right side. So I don't even want to go near the new house. I want to go down where I think the old house was. As soon as I get there, when I park my vehicle, I get in the machine, I ground balance it, and I have a look at the lay of the land. This is a perfectly disc plowed field. There's no evidence of rock piles or big trees or anything. I always look for the highest piece of land. And I've learned that through going many, many fields, many, many times. And I'll tell you right now, 90% of the time, the best site is the highest spot of real estate on that frontage. Sorry.
If you were looking for a homestead site and there was a hydro line nearby, would that interfere with it?
Sometimes.
Yeah, especially depending on the type of machine you have and the frequency that you have on it. For instance, this machine here, if you get electrical interference, it couldn't just be power lines. It could be an invisible dog fence. They give a lot of interference. But you lower your sensitivity on the machine, and we're going to go through that procedure here in a minute. It's just to make the machine a little less sensitive to the interference.
Okay.
But typically, like I said, it's just anything electrical. And you know what the funny thing I found? If you go early in the morning, you get very little interference. But as humans get up and go to work and wash and shower and TV, and the interference gets more and more and more. Yeah. So it's just a little observation I've made over the years. Okay. If you're going to go to a spot that's got power lines, go early or late.
Yeah. Do you have any problems getting permission? You know, you mentioned about houses and next door.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
dug up and, you know.
I've been fairly consistent and fairly lucky getting permissions. I have been turned down flat out, right? And I respect that. You know, everybody, I have a good chunk of property out in the country. And, you know, if someone asks to metal detect my property, I'd say no, because I'm going to detect it. But I think if you go on a sunny day, typically, and introduce yourself, it's tough this last year and a half with COVID, though.
Right.
It's very tough to approach anybody just because you got to respect that.
Right.
But if you just take the time and talk to somebody and introduce yourself and tell them where you live and this and that, quite often you get a favorable result and get a yes. And I share stuff with a lot of the people that give me permissions too. And I've lost track of how many 1,800 coins I've given to people over the years. And I guess that answers your question, sir.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, Amy's going to put up another picture of a couple of items. I think 2 items.
This here is a very special coin I found. It's an 1808 US $half. You don't find these very often up north here, more so down south. But this one here, I was just in like a beaver meadow, and about 8 to 10 inches down, I got a wicked signal on this machine with this small coil I have on the machine. And sure enough, I pulled that out. It was right black when I found it.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
This here is my oldest dated coin. I'm sure I've found other coins older than this, but I don't have, that you can't read because they're worn right down. But this here is my special coin. This is my 1766 Spanish 2 real, minted in Madrid, Spain. And I found that with this machine, the same spot I found my other silver that was just up here. And this was only about 6 inches down in the farmer's field.
Okay. The next function we're going to talk about on a detector is called a notch function, which correlates into the question the gentleman asked earlier. So notch is a very unique thing, and a lot of detectors have it. So let's say, for instance, Amy is out here in front of the building and she loses 1 gold earring. Darn. She calls Adam, she calls Ward, we're going to go find it for her. So what we would do is turn on our machine, take the gold earring that she still has, and listen and look at the numbers. Oh, it's 60, 62, 60, 62 consistently. So we press the notch buttons and eliminate everything below 60 and everything above 62. And we go for a walk. And I guarantee you, if it's there, we're going to find it.
That's it, yeah.
I've only used it twice, but it has its purpose. Some people like to find just silver coins. So if they want to find just silver rings or gold rings, so that's what I say. Take the item, listen, look, okay, notch everything out below, everything up above, if that's what you want to focus on. I don't normally do that because I'm trying to find all the old copper, silver, brass, etc., etc. Anything you want to add to the notch? No. Any questions on notch? Okay. The next thing is ground balance. The first thing you have to do, I think on any machine,
For the most part,
yeah,
have a built-in ground balance.
Yeah. They call it ground balance. If you could stand up, don't turn the machine on. We're going to walk and talk and show you how to do it. So there's a button on his machine that says ground balance. Every piece of ground has different mineralization and different things. So you have to first and foremost find a clear spot, and you press the ground balance button and show them how you do that.
You hold it down and you pump it.
Yeah.
Like I pump it a few times until the number on the screen evens out.
And what that does, it makes your machine perform as good as it can in those ground conditions. And I can assure you this area is very high mineralization, very high. So another button is the sends button, which we touched on there. Most of the time I have my machine set up on max sensitivity. That way I can hear absolutely everything. Now, when I get into a really trashy site, then I will lower my sensitivity, and or if I have overhead wires or ground wires, I will quite often, if I have any interference, I will lower the sensitivity, and it usually balances out the machine, and then I go ahead with it. You want to add anything to that? Okay. Any questions on sensitivity on the machines?
I have a question. It's not related to sensitivity though. It's something that you mentioned. So I found online, like trying to research different properties and stuff, there's a wealth of stuff about Ontario. And I find a really hard time finding anything about the Quebec side. A friend of mine has this beautiful big farm that he said I can come and detect, but I have no idea, you know, what was where and when on that farm. Is there a good resource that you found, preferably online, I guess in today's day and age, for properties in Quebec?
I can answer you that, no. And I'm not trying to be short with you. I typically have hunted in Quebec, make no mistake. But like you say, it's very, very hard to get information like we have here with lots and concessions and where the schoolhouses were and the taverns and the fairgrounds and so on and so forth. I actually detected with several people from Quebec over the years, and they don't have any neither. I don't think it exists. Okay. I think you might have to go to the provincial archives. I think that's what you should do, Phil. Okay. It's time consuming, but guess what? It'll be so rewarding if you get into the right spot.
All right, I just thought I'd ask, because when you mentioned that, you mentioned this maps thing at McGill, and I looked at McGill's website here, and there seems to be a wealth of stuff with like the Montreal area. Yep. And they have historical maps and atlases, but I wasn't really able to find the thing you were referring to.
Yeah, if you Google Canadian Digital Atlas Project, that will bring up the, pardon me?
Okay.
Yeah, Canadian Digital Atlas Project. I think that's what it's called.
I have it on my cell phone here.
He's got it on his cell phone. But anyways, that's for Ontario. It's not for Quebec. But if you can find a comparative in Quebec, because Montreal, face it, Quebec, east on these is very, and St. Lawrence right through the center of it is very, very historical.
Okay.
There's stuff you could possibly find from the 1500s there, believe it or not, from the whalers and the fishery and the fur trade and so explorers.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Any other questions?
Well, you might have to resort to Google Maps for Quebec, and I think that they have a feature now. Actually, I haven't used it, but I was reading about it where you can look at past, at previous pictures of what you're looking at.
Yeah, it's a feature of Google Earth. It only goes back to the 80s, though.
Some of them. Believe it or not, like when I say I research, I mean like I research a lot. I cross-reference the oldest aerial photos I can get, which is usually 1910-ish, 1930-ish. But the more research you do, the better chance of finding something amazing. It's incredible, some of the things we have found over the years, but it's mostly through research or word of mouth, eh? Somebody will say, well, you know, there was an old building over there or whatever, but research on the computer, there's such a wealth of information. You have the Archives of Canada, you have the Archives of Ontario, you have the Hudson Bay Archives in Manitoba. It's just incredible. Books, journals. I get online journals. I'll tell you a really quick story. It was just priceless. That's why I want to share it. There was a lad, a soldier from England in Kingston in the late 1600s, early 1700s, and he had to pound his wheat with a 14-pound cannonball to make flour to make a loaf of bread, for God's sakes. Like, isn't that incredible? Who's going to pound a 14-pound ball to make flour nowadays? Nobody. But it just gives you an idea how rough they had it back then. And a matter of fact, while we're on it, they actually took their pork and they had to boil the pork to get the salt out of it so they could eat it. That's pretty well preserved. Yes, go ahead, Shane.
Oh, also, I was going to suggest if you're trying to find an area, sort of what was there, maybe check with one of the local historical societies or local museums, because if anybody has the stories or the maps, it's probably them. And again, depending on which area of Quebec, there's a number that are, I mean, amazingly bilingual. Like there's a lot of the areas where there's English family histories, there's a lot of that available. So I'd suggest that as a resource in the area that you're looking at your friend's farm is at.
Yeah, absolutely. And even your local libraries in that area, Phil, some people write books. It might not be, like say you're looking for fur trade stuff. Well, it might, the heading on it might not be fur trade, but if you get a reference in the back of a book, it'll show you leads and hit tips, and then I hit those and try. I usually find something from a lead, from a lead, from a lead, from a lead. It takes time, but in the winter, not much to do. Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to go with headphones. I highly recommend using headphones, and there's several reasons. The first reason is you get a very clear sound, and you have volume control either on the headset or on the machine. So that way, if it's windy out, you can increase the volume very rapidly to hear the good stuff. The deep, deep coins and stuff like rings, whatever, anything desirable that's deeper, if you don't have headphones on, you're not going to hear it. And the reason being is masking from all the junk. So headphones are very critical. You can get waterproof headphones, wireless. I have wireless headphones on 2 of my 3 machines. And that's very nice if you hunt in the woods. If you hunt in the woods, it can be a little aggravating at times with the headphone cord that's attached to the machine. Now, I did it well, I still do it occasionally, but I use my high-end machine. It's wireless. I don't worry about it as much, but I do hunt the woods a lot. You want to add anything to that? Headphones?
Yes, use headphones. For years and years, I've noticed people not using headphones on different machines. And then when I use headphones, as Ward says, you get a much clearer signal. If it's windy out, you're not going to hear the signal as well.
Car traffic.
If it's cold out, your headphones will protect your ears.
Good call. Yep.
So I would use them. Thank you.
Any questions on headphones? Okay, fair enough. So we went through it fairly quickly, but again, this is just a basic introduction. To get into advanced, you'd need probably 2 more lectures than that, but we're going to go through some of the things that you need to help you find your target real quick. And that's what these are. These are called ProPointers. Is there anybody familiar with a ProPointer? Yeah, right on, Wally. Right on, Wally. I can't hear you. Okay, so the idea is, when we explained this to Amy earlier, so the idea is you get a target with your detector, and now you've got to find it. So you always dig a U-shaped plug if you're in a public space, a U-shaped plug, and you flip it over. And that way, when you find your stuff, put all the dirt back, take the item out, you flip it back down, it will seal and heal very well. But this here, this one's submersible. It's called a Garrett Carrot. Fairly expensive, but it's worth its weight in gold if you need it or want it. So the idea is you dig your plug. This is an early 1900s silver dime. It's in really rough shape, but so it's inside the mud. Can you hear that? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear that. All right, fair enough. So what it does, it quickly isolates the desirable target. Sometimes you might find 2 or 3. I found up to 13 silver dimes in one hole once, which was exciting. This one here is a little cheaper version, but it works just as good. Oh, before I get ahead of myself, this one vibrates. So if you're in water and submersed in water, you can't dig because it's rocky or something, but you can still put this down and get it close to your target. Once it starts vibrating and making a sound, you reach down with the other hand and pull the target out. I'll turn it off. So this one here is very good for, you can even use this in the rain, but you can't submerge it. Same idea. And some of the ProPointers actually are electronically linked to your detector, which is kind of a neat feature. I don't know a lot of people that have that, but it is available. But again, the more toys you got, the more things it can break. Any questions on ProPointers? Okay, fair enough. This one here is very 6 settings, Adam?
Not 100% sure, but
4 to 6 settings.
There's a whole bunch of settings on it.
Yeah, you can make it start vibrating and there, or like right there. So it's up to you, but it's very, very adaptable. Very nice. And I would highly recommend a ProPointer if you're going to get into the hobby. Okay, so what we're going to do a little demo on some of the different sounds some of the machines make. But first, we're going to get Amy to bring up another picture or 2, and then we're going to turn on the machine and show you some of the different sounds. Okay, so I found this last year on a site that I hit many, many times. It's a stamped piece. It says, "Long live Queen Victoria." I've always said I was born 100 years late, and I'm sure if I was born in her era, I would have had to have a chat with her. Anyways, I just love finding Victoria stuff because it's old. That's the thing. A little humor there, but not really good humor, but whatever. But anyways, yeah, that's a neat piece. It's quite a large piece. It's a stamp piece, though. I'm sure it was mass produced, but it's the only one I've seen anybody find. So it's a neat little find. So these are 2 coins.
Well, I guess it's one of mine.
Okay, go for it.
I found these on a local property out in Beckwith Township. The 1916 dime. I found this. I scanned the hole. I found the dime, and then it started to rain, so I left. Came back a week later, and then scanned the hole again after a week, and then found a 5-cent piece. So, and that 5-cent piece is the first Canadian silver 5-cent piece I ever found. Of that one, they call them fish scales.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. He's going to turn on the machine now, and we're just going to go through some of the sounds with some of the different items. We have aluminum, copper, brass, iron, bottle caps, pull tabs. Oh, I hate pull tabs. Okay, so essentially, Adam, you always keep the coil closest to the ground as possible. There's some sites that you probably would be better to hit in the spring just because the vegetation will be laying flat after the snow. It's almost impossible to even get a reading this time of year because the grass and vegetation in the woods is just too high. So this is a great nail. You hear the grunt? Can you hear the grunt? Just give us a thumbs up if you hear the grunt. Can you hear the grunt? Okay, very good. Okay, this is a pull tab. This is a deluxe one. It still has the tail on it. That sounds awesome. But you look at the numbers. What's the numbers, Adam?
5860.
5860. Guess what? If you're on a spot and you're getting 5860, notch it out. You can dig thousands of these. Thousands. Beautiful bottle cap. That's kind of a mid-tone. And, you know, again, until you get practice with your machine, you could confuse that with a desirable target. So it's just practice. You get, okay, now we're going to do what everybody probably wants to listen to, gold. So this is a large men's 10-carat white gold ring that I had found. See, it's kind of scratchy and notchy. So you,
sorry, the other way.
Yeah.
52, 51.
52, 51. So it's a little bit different than the aluminum, but not that far off. So this is the problem with gold and aluminum. They're very, very similar, unfortunately. Go ahead with the question, Shane.
Yeah, just for my sort of peace of mind here, when you were waving that in front of that, that looked really fast. Now, I've seen some people like doing beaches and they're very slow and methodical. Is there a sort of pattern?
Purposes. It's just for demonstration purposes.
Okay. So normally you'd be swinging it a little slower, so the sound would be, okay, all right. I just thought, yeah.
We're going to get in. We're going to get into techniques in a little bit, Shane.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's just for demonstration so you can hear the sound. Bring it back up. So this silver dime. I'll go slow just for Shane.
81.
81.
That's typical signal.
That's your typical signal. But good point. I never thought of that. Okay, so now we're going to do a large cent. It's a early 1900 large cent that I pulled. We're going to go slow. 75 on the ID on it. So I can tell you they're not all 75. A lot of them are, but the Queen Victoria ones typically are what, 66, 68?
Mine have been like 68, like a solid 68. Yeah. The George V ones I find are 72 to 75. The Edward ones are around typically 75, Edward VII.
Yeah, so it's a little different, and every machine has different ID numbers. But again, you have to get a machine and try it to find out what it's telling you. Is there what do we, oh yeah, okay, so this is a part of a lead. I'm not sure if it's cast lead, but it's definitely lead. I think it's a hydroelectricity related. We'll let you listen to that sound. I'll let you sleep. So it's in the 80s. So that's like silver, but it's lead. Again, yeah, but we dig a lot of musket balls. So musket balls are lead. If you're on an old site, of course. So that kind of just gives you a little idea of, you know, detecting a little bit. But like Wayne said, you know, or was it Wally? When you swing your coil, keep it tight to the soil and don't swing too far and try to overlap your swings. And that way you get good coverage and you'll pick up the majority of your stuff. That being said, there's always exceptions to the rule. So let's just say this coin is orientated to the surface like that, opposed to being like that. So you have a much smaller profile. And depending on what angle you come over it with your coil, you may or may not hear it. You will hear the majority of the coins, 98% of the time. But quite often, if the coin orientation is different or a little deeper and different, you probably won't pick it up unless you come at it with a different angle. And that's the same with gold, silver, copper, pretty much any item. So if you get a really good spot that you're finding all kinds of goodies, hit it north-south first, and then try it from east-west, a different direction. And some people even go on the diagonal, and I won't say always, but quite often you'll pick up more targets. Another thing I can tell you is plowed fields. They don't get worked every year, but when they do, new stuff comes up. I don't know if it's the frost heating it or if it's the action of the disc and the plow, but if you have this here, like that, the nail above the coin, if the plow moves the nail, bingo, you're going to hear that coin all day long. And that's happens every time a field gets disced or plowed. You think you've got it all. Nobody gets it all. Nobody. And I know that for a fact. Would you agree with that statement? Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of a neat little thing that you learn as you go, I guess. So other things you're going to need is diggers, hand diggers. In public places, you have to use hand diggers. You can't use shovels. Well, you can, but it's not the ethical. It's not ethical. So these are two different types of diggers. And they're very aggressive. They're very solid. And they work incredible. And you can see they're serrated for roots. If you've got a lot of roots. And I would highly recommend getting a good quality digger. You get a cheap one, you're going to bend it, break it, probably the first trip out, and you won't be happy because you can't dig. So invest in a good heavy duty hand digger. They're worth their weight in gold, yeah?
That's right.
Yeah. Now we both use the heavy duty stuff. Oh, go ahead, Charles. Charles?
Okay, do they make diggers out of wood? And the reason I asked is because I'm primarily interested in things like coins. So if you use one of those things, you know, you can really wreck the coin.
Okay, so let's pretend this is a piece of ground and the coin is dead center right here. Are you with me, Charles?
Yep.
So what you do is we dig a plug around the signal, U-shaped, flip the plug out, use the ProPointer, find the coin, flip the earth back down. Okay. Some people use screwdrivers, believe it or not. I've tried it a couple of times in a public place. So you just put the screwdriver down where you think the target is and just flip it up. And it does work, but it takes practice.
That's the old-fashioned pinpointer with the screwdriver.
Yeah, in the old days, they didn't have all this great technology. They just used a screwdriver and prodded it and flipped out the item.
Okay, thanks.
Pardon me? Oh, you're welcome. Now, me and Adam do a lot of rural farm fields and bush sites, and we have heavy duty shovels. I can literally stand on my shovel when it's in the ground to pop the plug out. literally stand on it. That is a good shovel. It's not wood, it's solid steel. And it's very similar to this on the edges, serrated. And it just helps get down in between the roots and stuff like that. So you use the hand diggers in public places, and you can use shovels on your own property or your neighbors with permission, whatever. So hand diggers are very essential, or a screwdriver if you're just going for small stuff. But if you dig, like I say, a plug, a U-shaped plug, flip it over, you don't hit the coin. Because if you hit the coin, the value just goes, yeah. So another accessory that you're probably going to want to use. Go ahead there, sir.
I want to ask you mentioned you do a lot of plowed fields. Does fertilizer affect your coins, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. It corrodes everything. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. A lot of stuff you find in the ground, especially the copper and some brass, they do corrode to the point where you can't even make the date out on them. Yeah. The silver ones, the gold obviously doesn't corrode, or very, very, very little. You can still make out the dates and stuff.
Right. Thank you.
Yep, you bet. So another thing you're going to probably want, go ahead, Daniel.
I was just curious if either of you had done any detecting in Europe.
No, have you?
My closest place to Europe would be Cape Breton Island.
Well, to be honest with you, Daniel, I'm going to be right up front with you. I haven't, but my very, very close member was a senior government official in Norway, and I had an invite to go there for 10, 12, 15 days if I wanted to, but
yeah.
I'll tell you why I didn't go in a bit when we get into our finds. I didn't need to go there to find something old, and I'll show you in a bit. You'll see.
Sounds good.
Okay, so this is a button I found on our property. It's called a sporting button, and I believe most sporting buttons are about 1880, 1890-ish.
Depends. Some are 1830s to 1860s.
But this pattern here is typically that 1880, 1890 style, and it's gorgeous. And it's a thoroughbred. You can tell by the neck. I'm not a horse expert, but we did have horses for a lot of years. You can see the neck on that. Yeah, that's a thoroughbred. See how the tail is cropped. So it was a neat find. So this is obviously another button. That one there, I never did get the ID. Oh, sorry, that one's yours. I got the same one. Go ahead.
That one there is, I don't know if it's Royal Navy or Royal Marines. I'm not 100% sure, but sometimes they say by the way the rope is, you can tell which branch of the Navy it is. But that would have been a two-piece button, probably Napoleonic War era, and I only found the front of it. So
I got the same one. I don't know anything about it. One more. This is what do they call those? Sorry, rosary. I was told it has real pearls on it. I have no idea, but the thing that's kind of unique is it's intact. Even though it's slightly damaged, to find it complete like that, in my mind, like the man asked about damaging stuff, well, obviously if I didn't dig a proper plug, I never would have got it out of the ground undamaged. So it's a nice little find. It's the only one I ever found. And ironically, it wasn't far from a church. Yes, go ahead, ask the question.
Yeah. Back to your sporting buttons, Ward. There's different animals and birds, correct?
Absolutely. I've got pheasants, dogs, man with a shotgun, horses, a lot of horse ones for some reason, a lot of dog ones, and
foxes, dogs, deer, elk. Depends on what they were hunting. They would ask whoever supplied the buttons for an animal with that type of sporting button, I guess.
Yeah, I just love finding sporty buttons. They're a lot of fun. I probably got over 1,000 buttons that I've pulled in 8 years. Like, it's just incredible the amount of buttons we find. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. I think I said knee pads or no? Okay, we didn't say knee pads. Well, if you're on your hands and knees for any length of time, you're gonna want knee pads, I can assure you. So, especially as you get older. So there's pants you can buy that actually have built-in knee pads, and they're just incredible. You got to find your size. So that's the thing, eh? So they're very good. The ones that you kind of just kind of have straps on the back. They don't seem to stay there for any length of time. What I used to do is I used to carry just a little foam pad, and it's very, very good. And I just had a little string through the corner, and I tied it to my buckle. So when I got a target, I just put the pad down and I put my knees on it, because your knees just take a beating. If you're out digging 5, 6, 7 hours, your knees really take a beating. Is there a question there? No, I guess not. So another thing you're going to need is something to put your finds in. You know, you could use something as simple as just a little old pill jar. You have a pouch. If you're digging lots of stuff, you need a pouch. Or some people use a small pack sack or a small pouch on their hip. Always take your stuff out, you know, well, within reason. You're not going to take a half a car out, but you know, if it's small, take it out. So if you're doing a lot of water on beaches and stuff, you need a sand scoop, and there's lots of different makes and models available. Again, I buy heavy duty because I want it to work when I want it to work. So I spend the extra $1 today to save me a heartache tomorrow. Sand scoops are really good, really good. Always bring extra batteries for your machine. There's nothing more frustrating than starting to dig and find that nice silver coin that he found in 1808, and then your machine dies and you didn't bring any batteries. Oh, so bring batteries. Leather gloves. You should have a set of leather gloves, or for at least the hand that you're gonna, because there's glass, sharp metal. A leather glove is really good to have. So we're going to talk about techniques a little bit. Everybody has their own style, but as I think it was Wayne that brought up that, or Wally maybe. No, it wasn't Wally. We still can't hear him.
It was Shane.
Shane, sorry. So the techniques, you get out of your vehicle, you get all your stuff, you turn on your machine, you ground balance it, and then you swing it. So about that speed there is about right. Hey, Adam, is that?
That's right.
That's about right. If you go too fast like that, you're never going to find nothing. Like it's not right. So about this fast, back and forth. Now, if you're on a plowed field with the furrows, I think they're called furrows, plowed field. So let's just say the plow went this way, like that. They say that you should go like this. I don't know if you can see that. Go with the furrows. And the idea is your coil doesn't get as much negative air. And I've done this and it works really well. So if you go this way, you're going to get a lot more voids with your coil. So try to go with the direction of the turned earth that's flipped over. That's very good thing. You've done that before.
A lot less tripping over the humps.
Well, that's the other thing. It's a lot easier walking. Maybe that's why I just naturally started doing it. I don't know. Try to overlap your coil on your swings, because I'm as guilty as anybody. You're out there and you're just having a great time and you don't overlap. Well, you're going to miss stuff. But if you come back from the other direction, quite often you pick it up. But try to overlap your coil the best you can. And like I said earlier, if you find a really, really, really good spot, north, south, east, west, and then if you're still finding stuff, do the diagonal. It's incredible. I found a pair of women's earrings on the diagonal, the third pass on a very small site, which I didn't pick up going north, south, or east or west, which is quite ironic, really, but it worked. Okay, so now we're going to talk just a little bit about ethics. So first and foremost, there's laws of the land, as we all know, and they're should be followed religiously. So what I mean by that is designated historic sites, you don't dig on those. You can't. It's against the law. You get caught, you might get a hug. You're going to get in trouble. So you've got to get permission, as one gentleman had asked earlier. To get permission is first and foremost. You have to respect other people's properties. Once you got permission, then you're good to go. Anything you want to add to that, Adam? No? Okay.
Permission is the main key.
Yeah, so once you get permission, then you just do your thing and share the stuff with the person that gives you permission. You know, it's just part of it. So another thing about ethics, no shovels in public places. The big shovels, you can use, these are what you use in public places. No shovels. You just don't use them there. It's just frowned upon. Always take your item out. If you find a bottle cap put it in your pouch, dump it in the garbage can, bring it home, recycle it. I have a 5-gallon pail for copper, a 5-gallon pail for brass, and a 5-gallon pail for lead. And about every year or two, I bring it in and I'll get $150, $200 just on scrap that I pulled over the years. And if it's on like an area, the more you take out, the more chances of finding a desirable target. I've seen guys, well, I didn't personally physically see them, but I've seen spots where they have dug and they left that right beside their plug. And on top of that, they didn't even fill in the hole. That's not ethical. That's a slob, in my opinion. You've seen it too, eh? Yeah. So if you're going to go metal detecting, you're going to dig a hole, take the crap out, fill in the hole. Common sense. You'd be amazed at how many people just dig a hole, leave the junk there, and just leave. It's just incredible. So we talked about the U-shaped plug. Does everybody understand that concept on when you dig a plug? Any questions on that? Okay, very good. Take the crap out. That's the bulk of it, really. She's going to bring up another picture or two here on some of the things.
Oh yes, my infamous Cameo. I found this out in Beckwith Township. I do a lot of hunting out in Beckwith, but this is probably one of my better. This is the only Cameo I've ever found, and it's in pretty good shape. It just needs to be replated, and I put a pin on the back. You can wear it.
Nice.
But I think that one's I think that's around late 1800s. Okay, this is some farm field finds from this past spring I found out in Beckwith. I had to drive my truck about 1.5 miles back in the bush through the swamp and whatnot. Anyways, those are your typical field finds. You got a lot of flat buttons, cuff buttons, tomback buttons, pipe stem. There's a 19 teens Canada flag there with enamel on it. Your Bank of Upper Canada large cent, 1854. That's a typical date you'll find.
That's copper. That's a Canadian copper coin.
And that's large. That's about the size of a silver dollar.
They call that the Dragon Sleigh coin, St. George's Dragon Sleigh coin. Fairly common. I probably got about a dozen.
Yeah.
So this is farm fields again. This was this year, actually. The largest item there is called a rosette. Typically, it's on the bridle of an ox or a yoke of ox or horses. The item here that's kind of silverish is a bit of a mystery. It's a bell, but the very top part is missing. It's the only one. It's very, very ornate. And again, a couple more buttons. You find a lot of buttons. The buttons always come in mid to low tones. So these are some of the better buttons I found on one site. It's a very old site. And essentially what it was just a stopping place. I believe most of those buttons came from England, except for the one is US. This is a US officer's button. The bottom left-hand corner. It's a large one with the powder horn on it. And it's an officer button. Yeah, that one there. The one above it is a miners and sappers button. So the ones to the right, the 4 that are identical, they figure that was a militia button. I haven't nailed it down exactly, but those were groups. Ironically, I didn't find anything else there on that site, just the button. But what a nice display of buttons. So this here was found on my property this year, actually. This one, the bottom right-hand corner is a baseball belt buckle, I guess you call it.
Looks like, yeah.
Yeah, it says baseball right on it. It's got a couple of bats. The item to the left of it is a woman's item. It's a Victorian brooch for her hair. The item to the left of that is probably from a handheld oil lantern. It's a little different than and it's very ornate with the little cloverleaf kind of styles. And above it is the 2 1898 pennies, large cents. And to the right of that is a Victorian brooch that's very badly damaged. When it was first coming out of the ground, we thought the stone was a ruby, but it's not, it's glass. Still fun to find. Here's a bunch of dog tags, and probably most of you live in quite a few of these different townships. The one I like the best is the one it says, the bottom, right here on the far right, it says dog tax, Kitley Township, number 5, 1926. It's on the far left. Dog tax in the 20s. Very good. I like the one with the dog bone, shaped as a dog bone, Ivy. That was up in Northern Ontario. That's where I'm from.
Oh, here we go. My this is my famous cricket medal I found out in Beckwith as well, dated 1893 from, I believe it was from New Zealand.
It's gold, isn't it?
It appears to be gold, but we don't know what percentage, because I didn't want the guy to scratch it all up. It's from Deloraine, New Zealand. So the guy must have went off to play sports, or maybe he was out there working, who knows. But when he comes back to his family farm, he loses that. He's probably wearing it to show his family how proud he was. And
very nice item.
And I've never seen anything like it. Deloraine, there's a town in Manitoba, but it didn't start till after 1893. So this is, we figured it out from New Zealand.
Nice. That's a very nice find, Adam. Oh, question there.
Yeah, just to follow up, Adam. You said when you dug that metal, it was as shiny as if it just came out of the store.
All I did is wipe off the dirt.
Nice. I love it. That's one of my favorite finds that Adam showed me. It's gorgeous. Okay. So these are bells. There's a whole different variety of them here. The large one in the center is called a crowdal bell, and it has numbers on the bottom center. That's the largest one I ever found, and it's quite large. So the one in behind it, there's 3 of them. They're all kind of the same. We call those trumpet bells, eh?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think we call them trumpet bells. Now, they were used for a number of different things, all these bells. Sometimes they were on goats. Sometimes they were on horses or cows and stuff like that. But there's some there that aren't quite as old. There's one on the top left-hand side is kind of shiny. Yeah, it's a sleigh bell. It's not that old. But some of the other ones at the very bottom center, they're from the 1700s for sure, and early 1800s. But we find these all the time, and they really sound nice and clear on the machine.
There's a question about them.
Oh, sorry, we had to go back to the other picture. Sorry, we have a question there. Sorry.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just actually 2 quick questions. One is this a year-round activity? Like,
absolutely. If I could do it 365, I would, Scott. Typically, though, to be more serious about it, you're kind of restricted with weather, eh? It's not fun being out there when it's 40, 42 above. It's not fun when there's mosquitoes are drawing a pint of blood out of you an hour, and they do. And depending on the type of site, if the vegetation's too long, you can't essentially dig anywhere. The best time is spring and fall. Those are your absolute. We've dug every year when there's snow on the ground, as long as the frost hasn't penetrated.
What about ice?
Dug through it. It's not fun.
Very thin. Put it this way, I'm retired Army, military. I was in Alberta a couple of winter exercises. We had to dig our trenches with an axe in sand. Once the frost is in the ground, it's hard digging. Okay. It's not fun. So no, it's not an all year thing, but you get a good 2 months in the spring and a good 2-3 months in the fall, winter type of thing.
And I guess just I won't be long. The second question is, you've done a great job of identifying a lot of these items and the history behind them. How did you find that? Like, you just went online with pictures of it, or?
Partially, yes. A lot of books, people that detect have seen it or talked about it. Senior people, oh, geez, there's one of those in the North Lanark Museum, for instance. Okay. Yeah, but you can go online. You can go on forums. There's a lot of different forums available. You can go on there, and quite often the people that have some time digging, like me and Adam, you get to learn, kind of the data, and that's part of the fun. You find something really unique, and we've got a couple pictures coming up that are, well, especially one. It's just truly mind-boggling what you can find in the ground. It's you got to work at it though. Make no mistake. The more effort and time and interest you put in it, the more you get out of it. Go ahead. Next question. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, just a question. We live in Beckwith Township, and Beckwith Township was part of the first military settlement. So I know Adam spends a lot of time in Beckwith Township in finding military buttons. To me, that's amazing because I guess they came back from the War of 1812 and wore the uniform. That was their clothes. Adam, how many military buttons have you found and what types, roughly?
A lot of Royal Sappers and Miners. Every property I've been to, I think I found at least 2 Sappers and Miners buttons. There's one property I found almost a whole coat full. I've dug a few different regimental buttons, Navy. Almost every property I've been to, I've found military buttons, minus a few properties where you just find the typical sporting buttons or flat buttons. But for the most part, you'll find military buttons if you know the signals for them and whatnot.
From myself, the oldest US button I found was that one you've seen a few minutes ago. I also found a large one with an eagle with spread wings and an olive branch in one foot and something in the other foot. And I don't remember, but it was a general service button, but it's a very large one. It would have been on their winter great coat is what they call it. English buttons, Sappers and Miners. I also have another item that's even predates that. And I've actually contacted the museums in England and quite frankly, I haven't got a response, but COVID's been kind of affected that. But quite often you find English, American, and Canadian buttons. I haven't found any old French ones yet. That one I found, I don't have it with me though. Anyways, yeah, buttons are fun to find. I love finding buttons. Does Scott have another question? Scott, are you done? Oh, he's okay. Okay.
Well, Ward, just to follow up on that.
I'm done.
Could you explain to the group, most of them probably know what a sapper or miner is, but could you explain what they are or did?
Engineers.
Yeah, they're engineers. Essentially what happened when they started building the canal, it's truly mind-boggling that they actually accomplished the feat way back then. They didn't have hi-hos and all the bells and whistles, and they did everything by hand and wheelbarrow. And it's just truly amazing that, first of all, they could even get a route from Ottawa to Kingston. But darn well the natives helped them or guided them along. The natives knew the water. That was their backyard. So I'm pretty sure they got guided. Pardon me? So what I think is the way they did it is it's truly incredible. But a lot of the civilian contractors found out that they couldn't do the job. They hit really hard rock, granite. So they had to bring different units of military over to do the job. But you got to remember, the military guys are under the thumb. When the boss says jump, you jump. Civilians aren't like that. So that's why you find some buttons and coins and different relics. I actually found a cap badge from a the bearskin London hats. I can't even remember the name of those hats. But anyways, we're still trying to find out from a museum exactly where it came from in England. But we know it's dragoons, a unit from the dragoons. It would have been an officer's badge.
They're called Busbies.
That's it. That's the word. I can't keep it all in my head. Okay. Yeah, this is just a couple lantern tops. You find these quite often on the 1800 sites. Everybody had lanterns. They didn't have electricity, so an old oil lantern. Sometimes they had fat in it. I don't know what all they burnt. But anyways, yeah, you find those all the time. The center item is called an ox shoe. So I call it a cow. They call it ox. I don't know if there's a difference. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is their hoofs are split. So they'd have one of those on each side of the hoof. And of course, that's a big horseshoe. And a couple of the lovely nails that we always find on these old sites. That's my powder flask.
That's not mine.
Yeah, okay. So I found that on my yard, on the site we mentioned earlier on our frontage. I've got the other piece too. It's a powder flask, so everybody used a muzzleloader of some capacity. And that's what kept their powder contained and fairly dry most of the time. And it's just a neat find. I should take the time to really clean it up and put some wax on it to preserve it better. But it was pretty exciting to find that on my own property. And yeah. So this here is what they call archaic copper. The young lad that we were talking to earlier, what was his name? I can't see his face.
Phil.
Pardon me?
Maybe Phil.
I can't remember. I think it was Phil, yeah. Anyways, Phil, this piece here is archaic copper. It dates between 3,000 and 3,500 years old. The natives used to harvest the copper raw in Lake Superior. That was the biggest source. There was other sources too, but that's the most known, documented, proven site. So they took the raw copper, heated it up, folded it over so they could put that on an arrow. So that would be a conical point on the end of a stick that they would shoot at a deer, an elk, a buffalo to harvest it. So that's the reason I didn't go to Norway. I had an opportunity, and I just travel so much in the military, you get sick of traveling. So when I found that 3,000, 3,500-year-old item, I've got two pieces of it. Another one, the other piece I have is called a celt or a thumb scraper. And it's the same date. And the reason they know it's that old is when they find stuff like that on a site, they do a carbon-14 date on it, like teeth and bone, and I don't know about soil and seeds. But there's a science behind it. So that's how come I know it's that old. Any questions?
No, I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a comment though.
Certainly.
You had several buttons there. We do have a button club in Ottawa. We have the Ottawa Valley Button Club, and there are many members in that club that would help identify any of those buttons for you.
Noreen, what was the name of it again? Sorry.
Ottawa Valley Button Club.
Okay, I contacted a woman by the name of Diane's Buttons in Ottawa. Is she affiliated to that club you're talking about?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. It'd be people like Sue Dickout and a few like that.
Well, that's amazing, because you know what? That's exactly the type of resource we're looking for. You know, you can never get enough information. Nobody knows it all.
Amy could get you a booklet out of the research library that's Ottawa Valley Button Club, just to show you. We send out a booklet every month.
That's great, Doreen. Thank you so much for that information. And we will utilize it. You will hear from Adam or myself in the near future.
They would love to hear from you.
Very good. And we'll share some of the, like I said, I've got over 1,000 buttons. Some of them are just really,
they look crazy.
Yeah. You'll probably find some of them very interesting.
Yes.
Oh yeah, sorry. One thing I'm going to say about the last picture. Go ahead, Wally. Wally, you up and running?
Can't hear you, Wally.
Sorry.
What do you use to clean your items?
Okay. Okay, we're going to answer Wally's question. He got in contact with Amy. So a coin like this, when you find it, we'll get to that picture in a bit. A coin like this, you see all the crud and corrosion. If you don't want to damage the coin, you just use your fingernail. If your fingernail will not damage it normally, it will a little tiny bit, but very little. You can use a piece of wood like a toothpick. You can clean it with a toothpick. Your thumbnail is usually the best one. You can saturate it in water for 4 or 5 hours or overnight, and then go at it with a very, very soft bristle brush. If you've got what you think might be a very high value coin, don't clean it at all, because your value just goes. So any other ways, methods?
And a lot of times don't soak your old copper coins in water, because it'll change the color of them as well.
That's right.
Some people use just soap, like liquid soap, or some people use baking soda, you make it a paste, like if you're doing silver coins and stuff.
And the thing is too, Wally, there's a million things on the computer. If you just Google how to clean old coins, and again, don't clean what you think is a high value coin. Okay, so this here is from Cobalt, Ontario. These items here are cervicals, they call it? Anyways, crucibles, yeah, sorry. So essentially they'd get a sample if they found a spot where there's silver. It was mostly silver, but there was arsenic and there was cobalt bloom, and there was a little bit of gold and a nickel, but mostly silver. They were focusing on silver in the very, very early 1900s. So they take their sample, put it there, heat it up, and then they could see how much silver was in it. All these items all around these rocks, they all have various amounts of silver in them. If you look at the top right-hand rock, you can actually see the vein, there, and also just above that. Yeah, that's actually silver. So a percentage of silver in that rock is fairly small, but if you were to crush all the rocks you find, you'd get a big chunk of silver, pure silver at that. Mining sites are fairly easy to dig, except for there's a lot of iron, a lot of big deep iron, very hard to dig. And there is some arsenic level in those areas. But I've got some really nice silver nuggets I should have brought for the presentation. But any other pictures? Okay, so these are axe heads. The top one at the top left-hand side is 1630 to 1650. It's got the touch marks on it. It was made in Piscany, France. The one below it is another fur trade axe, but it's a newer one. The one below that is an old one, old fur trade. The one below that's an old fur trade. The one below that, you can see how it's tempered on the end. The one on the top right is a double edge. It's the only double edge one I've ever found. The one below that is made for squaring up the timbers for the ship mast and beams. And it weighs 8 pounds. And I wouldn't want to swing that all day, 24 days or 30 days a month. And then below that's a bunch of ox shoes. Okay, so this is a fur trade stuff. I love hunting fur trade. It's hard to find, but it's a lot of fun when you find it. So essentially the 3 points, they're kind of shaped arrowheads. Those are what they call kettle points. Pretty hard to date them, but you can pretty well be assured that they're late 1700s to early 1800s, but probably late 1700s. So the natives were traded copper pots and brass pots and different items. And once it was finished and no good anymore for boiling water or making stews, they would essentially cut pieces out and make arrowheads. And that's 3 of them. The large round item in the center is called a bale seal. And that dates between 1730 and 1760. So they would have bought wool blankets in a bale, like it's a bunch of them all compacted. And that was the bale seal at the top. And again, to keep the honest person honest, there was people who said that they could take the seams out of the bottom of the bale, pull a blanket or 2 out and seam it back up. But the bale seal was intact. So the top right is a blue fur trade button. That's the only one I've ever found. And it was a very, very highly traded item. The natives loved it. You must be aware that they made all kinds of beautiful things like saddles and what are those things they traded for money all the time? Can't remember the name. It was a thing of honor. A chief would present it to another chief. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it. No, that's something else. But anyway,
was it Watham?
That's it. Yes, thanks, Charles. Watham. And they were highly prized, and there was a lot of work involved. And they usually used beads, maybe not exactly like that one, but similar beads. And they used a lot of beads. How they got them so perfectly straight and so many of them is truly artful. It's just very artful. The item to the left of everything, that there's called a tinkler cone. So the natives, so I've researched and found out, now there might be other reasons they use them, but essentially they would have them on their jackets or overcoats or sometimes even on their pants, and they would just make a really light sound. And the idea was to keep the bears away. So they wouldn't surprise a bear, a mother bear with babies. They had these tinkler cones on, and they would take them off when they hunted for the obvious reasons. So that was a quick little hunt in a very, very remote spot. It was a miracle I even found the spot, but that's the fun of metal detecting. If you got out there playing the game, you got a chance. Anything exactly? Okay, we'll go back to the main screen if we could with everybody. So you have to bear with us. This is the first time we did this type of lecture, and we really appreciate everybody joining us and everything. I was just wondering if there's any questions anybody had overall about metal detecting, just anything like a general point. Does anybody have any more questions? Okay, go ahead, top right.
Do you ever get requests to look for things other than just go searching sites like?
Absolutely. I'll tell you my story. I'll let Adam throw first here.
I had one a few weeks ago. A farmer lost a tool off his cutter or whatever, like a tooth or whatever. The thing weighs about 20 pounds of steel. We were there 2 hours, found it just laying on the ground. I thought it would have been buried because he lost it in the spring, but it was just laying on the ground against a bush.
I'll quickly go through some of the things I've been asked. The biggest thing is property line markers, your corners, your 4 corners, your property. I get people coming up to me all the time, and usually I do if I'm not going on a dig. I had to find a pitchfork in a calving barn. I spent 4 hours looking for it. It wasn't in the barn, I can assure you. So we're like, oh, well, at least we tried. Well, it wasn't in the capybara. A ring, I had to find a ring. Didn't find it because I'm 99.9% sure the ring was not lost where they told me it was. I can pretty much guarantee, but I spent the time. A bucket tooth for a high hole, and I found it. Couldn't believe it. He said, yeah, that old fence line. I just went down and boom, great big tooth off of a high hole. Those are kind of things that you get asked, but mostly it's a corner property markers, boundary markers you get asked for. Brian?
Adam.
No.
That's my dad.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah. Well, I've never met him. Oh, I did meet him once. A lot of years ago. Yeah. Any other questions from anybody on detectors or things you find or anything at all? Okay, well, I guess we're pretty well got it all summed up then. I appreciate everybody taking the time out of your life and joining us. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much.
A big thank you again to Ward and Adam for taking the time to prepare this presentation for us. It was really fascinating to see the ins and outs of metal detecting and a great insight on how to get into this amazing skill. I hope that you enjoyed today's event and we look forward to seeing you all again soon.